Lovely. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, that was quite loud. I surprised myself there. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, congratulations to you all for making it this far at London Book Fair. You're all still alive, you look sentient, and you look deeply intelligent as an audience, so it's a pleasure to welcome you here. My name's Chris. I work at the National Centre for Writing, and it's my genuine honour and pleasure to introduce today Jeremy Tiang, who is the inaugural London Book Fair Translator of the Fair. For 2019. It is a brand new role this year, and Jeremy, whose face you will have seen on a large banner as you enter Olympia, is the first holder of the role. Jeremy is a translator from the Chinese. He's a translator of novels, poetry, plays, and non-fiction. Zhang Yuren, Chan Hokai, Su Wei Chan are authors who he has translated, amongst many others. He has been awarded fellowships and grants from the Penheim Translation Fund, from the NEA, from the Henry Luce Foundation, and he also won the People's Literature Prize of Mao Tai Cup for Translation. I think that's correct from your biography. He also very recently was a recipient of the English Pen Translators Translation Awards for Yang Ge's Strange Beasts of China, which will be forthcoming from Tilted Axis Press in 2020, which should be really exciting to see that come through. So, first of all, it's a pleasure to welcome Jeremy here today. We have a shortish period of time to talk to Jeremy about his work, about his kind of career, about his practice as a translator. He's also a novelist and short story writer, as well as a translator and a playwright too. He's a man of many talents. He kind of, in some ways, embodies the kind of the multi-talented, multitasking role of the translator that is emerging in the contemporary market. And so, in that way, it's very fitting that he is the inaugural translator of the fair. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone.
We're going to spend about 20 minutes or so chatting, and then we'll have a short period of time for questions after that. But I wanted to just, first of all, open the conversation by asking you how you came to translation as in professional terms, and kind of where you are in your professional career at the moment.
Where I am at the moment, in a state of flux, I think. I find it hard to answer this question because there are some people who have a very orderly progression into translation. They decide they love a language or love languages, study that language, and then start translating. And some of us have fairly chaotic lives and sort of live in lots of places and pick up bits and pieces and eventually realize that translation is a way to bridge all the different bits of ourselves and make sense of who we are. And that's kind of how I fell into it. I've done a lot of different things. And the progression, more or less, is went to drama school, became an actor, did not do well as an actor, started writing plays, started writing fiction because someone told me that the hardest thing about writing fiction was dialogue, and I thought, I'm a playwright, I can do that. And then realized that as a writer who is bilingual, I could translate, started doing that. That went rather well, and an agent, not my agent, another agent, gave me a piece of advice, which was always get on the horse that's running. So because the translation was the bit that was going the best of all the different things I was doing, I started doing more of it, and it became this virtuous circle where now that's pretty much most of what I do. I still do my own writing, but 90% of my time is spent translating, and here we are.
Kind of, if we're sticking with the horse metaphor for the moment, it's kind of sometimes hard to identify the horses that you're about to jump on and how fast they're going to run. When did you start feeling comfortable with translation as a primary career for you?
I think it was when I realized that I could stop worrying about getting work, in that I now know what my next 2 books are going to be. And that's been the case for quite a while. I've generally known what my next 1 or 2 projects are. I think when you're at that point and you have a sense that the work will keep coming and you can keep generating an income for yourself, you sort of allow yourself to take a breath and go, okay, I'm doing this is happening, it's real, it's not a fluke, or like I've learned to fake it well enough. Like the thing with imposter syndrome is that you don't really get over it, you just decide that you've learned to hide well enough and you'll never be found out. I guess it's stability. It's the sense that this can keep going, that it's sustainable. And that's been me for the last maybe 3 or 4 years, not that long. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of one of the things that I'm learning increasingly about the literary translation as a professional activity is that it's not one single professional activity, it's many overlapping sorts of activity that kind of build into a career or a kind of a period of work as a professional translator. Is that what you found in your activity?
Yes, it's a collage. It's lots of different bits because you can't just do one thing. I think in the popular imagination, you're sort of sitting at your desk at home, translating away, and now and then the phone rings and it's someone offering you more translation work. That never happens. It's for me, it's about 50% work that comes to me, usually via translators or agents or foreign language publishers, and work that I actively pitch. So I also spend a lot of time reading books in Chinese and trying to find projects that I want to work on, find books that I want to introduce to publishers, and sort of getting out there. And the slog of figuring out the rights, doing the sample and the report, which you're doing off your own bat because no one's paying for that, and then knocking on doors, getting to know the publishing scene so that you put it in front of the right people, making relationships so that people trust your taste and believe you when you say this is right for you. The whole package, and then in the spare time between that, actually translating the books.
Are there sort of separate parts of your translator's brain that kind of identify books and projects that you'd love to do out of personal interest but you think would never find a publisher? Then you see commercial books out there, you think, yes, I know someone who would pay me a large amount of money to do that really quickly. Do you turn off and on those parts of your brain?
I don't know. Well, I don't think there are books that will never find a publisher, partly because there are so many presses out there and so many readers. I really do think that there is a right place for every book, and if I feel that passionately about it, then so will other people, and it really is just finding the right circumstances and the right way to make it happen. So I don't really divide it up that way, and I don't think in terms of this will sell, partly because I'm really bad at that. I'm really bad at predicting what is commercial and isn't. So I just go by my personal taste and what I love and what resonates with me, and that's what I choose to bring into the world.
And you are part of Cedilla, which is a sort of a cooperative or a collective
yes,
kind of grouping of translators. Could you tell us a little bit about the rationale for that formation and what you do together?
Yes, Cedilla, the initial idea came from Sean Bai, who is sitting over there, and Julia Sanchez. Sean had spent a lot of time in London. I've got a mic and he doesn't. I can control the narrative. When I was in London before, I was an actor. I was mostly in Burger King commercials and corporate videos, but I didn't have a single agent, but I was part of a cooperative agency, which is when a group of actors get together and represent each other. So when Sean and Julia suggested to me that they were setting this up, I said, oh, it's like an actors cooperative, and I have experience of that. And the idea is that translators are often very isolated. We don't have agents. We mostly work at home. We don't see daylight. And it initially started as a professional thing, that we could pool our knowledge, our contacts, our resources, we could support each other. But I think as well as that, what it's become is a type of community. We've become stronger because we are together. And we support each other not just professionally, but also as part of the collective, as part of the same community, and we all feel stronger as a result.
So I think it's an interesting description on the Cedilla website that it's not just creating new translations, it's also about you identify potential translators for projects, you offer market intelligence, you make connections, you provide a network for literature travelling effectively.
Well, that tends to happen anyway, in that when you have a meeting with publishers, quite often they will ask you for information about the translation scene, because we tend to, between us, know much more than they do. So we know who's working on what, who are the voices to look out for, have you considered doing this or talking to these people? So this is a way of not really formalizing it, because it's not like we've monetized it or anything, but creating a single location where publishers can come to us, and people do find our website and talk to us that way, where the information is available and we have the information, or we can put you in touch with someone who has it. And we do that because it can otherwise be hard to know. There's no real database of all of this. But through us as conduit, we can put people in touch, and that's how a lot of this works. It's just about making the right connections, and we facilitate that where we can.
And how many translators are part of the collective now?
There are 10 people in Cedilla, most but not all of us based in New York.
And do you find that the work that is generated through that network comes from a particular market, or is it truly global?
Well, interestingly, it's hard to really say what work is generated by Cedilla, in that we're all out there pitching and meeting people. So Cedilla facilitates this, but it's very hard to draw a line and say this was a Cedilla project and this was not. It's more we use the resources of Cedilla to facilitate the different things we do. And it has opened doors that otherwise wouldn't have been open to us. But where the work comes from is different for each of us, because we're all doing different things and seeking out different opportunities. It's just made the road a bit smoother. It's an interesting model to think about in relationship to traditional author-agent-publisher relationships. You're doing something a little bit more subversive, collaborative, and mutually beneficial, rather than chasing individual benefit through that structure. Was that a deliberate choice, or is that how it works for you? I don't know if we set out to be subversive, but at the same time we did want to be disruptive, because the current model wasn't really functioning as well as it could have for us, and translation is much neglected. There feels like there isn't a smooth pathway to make translations happen, and there wasn't really enough communication around it. So that's what we try to facilitate. And a lot of it is just visibility. By standing together, we became more visible, and translation became more visible. And so people could come to us and talk to us.
And do you think that visibility is changing kind of the perceptions around the industry, or is that a slow process?
It's hard to say what comes first, because there are also now more and more presses that focus on translation, and there are more and more collectives. Shout out to the Starlings Bureau, who are around somewhere. Yes, excellent. And various regions of America have also got their own collectives. Small plug, the blog of ALTA, the American Literary Translators Association, is running a monthly series of interviews with different collectives. And I recommend you check it out. The Starling Bureau is the latest to be featured. And what's interesting is that the models are very different. So people are finding different ways to work together and to collaborate. But unquestionably, that does make translation more visible. And I think publishers and readers are paying attention.
How many years have you come to London Book Fair? Or how many times have you come to London Book Fair before?
Too many? 3, 4 maybe?
3, 4. Yeah. Have you noticed a kind of any sort of change in the perception of translation, or the presence and visibility of translation over those years, or is that something to be developed?
I think I do. It does seem more visible. It does seem more in the air. I mean, obviously this literary translation of the fair thing is a big step forward in terms of visibility. Just, the idea that translators exist and are people. I think there is something about physical presence and just staking our ground. The Literary Translation Centre at the back of the fair, yes, but it is a place that exists, and having...
It's a very vibrant corner, if not the back.
Yes. Yes, I think the periphery is always more interesting than the centre anyway.
Very true, very true. If we're thinking about what might... You are the inaugural translator of the fair. If you had a kind of if you were to anoint your successor and give them a job description, what might that look like next year? What do you think that
give them a job description?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I was told
apart
that
from a crown and a palanquin and a kind of a serenading troupe of people everywhere you went in Olympia.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? As the inaugural one, you kind of set the tone for what comes next. So I decided to... the best thing I could do for all future translators of the fair was to keep expectations very, very low. And it's funny, a lot of people have asked me what my duties are, and honestly, they are just to exist. Because it's about translation and translators being visible, and being the face of translation, as it were, kind of is good, but also I'm just a face, and it's about there being someone standing representing the community, but it could be any of us. It's like being the May Queen.
It's a very good word picture, which I'm now sort of chasing through my mind. When we think of translators, I think I think in the industry eyes, the translators seem to too often fulfill a function between the target of the initial book and the target market. Whereas my experience of translators is that they do many, many things within their community, whether it's mentoring, whether it's teaching, whether it's professional development work, whether it's network and market information. How have you seen the role of translators changing over recent years? Are you excited about what translators are now doing?
Yes, I mean, I'd have to be, because that's the only reason to keep doing this. God knows, none of us are in this for the money. But there is, I think, a growing awareness that translators can make things happen. We're not just there passively to be a conduit between one language and another. And the words don't just pass through us and come out differently, and then you get a book at the end. We're part of an ecosystem that has a lot going on, and we form a lot of these connections. We provide a lot of the context in which these translations are received, and we build structures. We show people how to...
That's the most professional thing that's ever happened to me. So you're building structures, Jeremy.
Yes.
Definitely coming out of the transcript.
I think translators are staking a position for ourselves and claiming validity as artists and recognition as artists, which means what we do is part of a coherent practice. We're not just people who do one job after another, but what we do is akin to what writers do, or what playwrights do, or what poets do. It's creating a body of work, and everything goes within that context.
I think that there's a number of conversations in the writers' communities, different writing communities, around trying to change their attitude, or the expected attitude of gratitude towards publishers for publishing them, and kind of staking a bigger claim in the process, the wider kind of ecosystem. Is that something that the translators, you say translators aren't in it for the money, but surely that should be there as well, and there needs to be discussions about that too?
Okay, I should have said we're not just doing it for the money. The money is a motivation, and translators do deserve to be paid for their work. But more than that, it's... The word gratitude is difficult because, yes, we are grateful to be published, and we are grateful for the support of editors and publishers who do a lot for us. But this isn't abject.
No.
It's not one way. It's about working together, and I think we provide something that no one else can, and we're part of this ecology, but we have a valid place in it. So we are grateful to everyone around us, but at the same time, we're not begging for scraps. We're an important role in this.
I think that's a point very well made, and I think that writers are feeling that in different kind of forms too, and challenging some of that kind of one-way street feeling. And perhaps one of the main values of the London Book Fair's kind of inaugural Translator of the Fair is that is very visible now, and the functions of the translator become visible alongside their humanity also.
Yes. It's about professionalization and us being seen as artists, as creative individuals, but also as professionals who deserve to be treated as professionals. And it's a job, and it's a job with parameters like any other. I mean, it's much more than that, but it does need to be seen as a job, because that gives it a certain seriousness, and we're treated with a certain level of respect and professionalism as a result.
Thank you very much. We don't have a huge amount of time today, but we do have a time for a couple of questions, if there are any questions that people would like to ask. I think there's a microphone there, and does anyone have a question that they would like to ask Jeremy? Yes. It's on its way to you, sir.
Yes, it is working. So would you say a translator is more likely to be recognized as an artist if they've got their own books they've written by themselves on the shelves of bookstores, as well as a body of works they've translated, just for more recognition?
I mean, no, what tends to happen is what gets recognized is celebrity. So, when Molly Ringwald translates a book, which she has, that gets foregrounded because she's a known quantity. It's this thing in publishing where if a name is recognized, then it gets treated with a certain level of seriousness. I don't think, or God, I hope not, you shouldn't have to write your own books to get taken seriously as a translator. It's a different form of artistry. Yes, plenty of people do both, and that's great. But you don't need to be Jhumpa Lahiri to be taken seriously as a translator, or you shouldn't be. I'm just going to answer what should happen. I also know what actually does happen, but let's.
It's two separate, though connected things. Do we have any other questions from the floor? We're now so befuddled by the lack of daylight. We do have another question.
Hi, ni hao. Don't hate me because of my question. My question is, do you think that foreign publishers, they feel sometimes a bit put off, or on the contrary, a bit interested in Chinese literature because of their political elements? Or they just, because I'm asking this question as a translator of Chinese literature, so sometimes when I approach an Italian publisher, because I'm Italian, sometimes, they say, well, we might not find this book too much interesting for our audience, even if maybe it's sold many copies in China.
I think Chinese literature is underrepresented I'm sure everyone thinks this about their language, but I do think Chinese literature is underrepresented, and that has led to certain stereotypes or certain limited views about what Chinese literature can be. But I don't think anyone should say, I'm not interested in Chinese literature because it does X. And it's a country of 1.2 billion people. There isn't a single Chinese literature. It isn't just one thing. So if you don't like this particular type, genre, aspect of Chinese literature, I have more.
Yeah, sorry, I do have another question which is maybe related to this. What do you think the differences between Taiwanese literature and Chinese literature are? Because
Well, look, Taiwan is a small country facing an existential threat, and China is a huge, multitudinous, tumultuous nation with 2,000 years of recorded history. These are very different places to come from, and as a result, people write in very different ways because they're in different contexts. For political reasons, there isn't as much cross-fertilization as you would think. The Chinese and the Taiwanese don't read each other as much as one would hope for neighboring countries with the same language. So as a result, they've evolved quite separately. And I think they're very interesting in different ways. Taiwan, very broad brushstrokes. Taiwanese literature is more abstract, more consciously literary, and Chinese literature is much more expansive, blunt almost, narrative focused. But again, these are huge, broad generalizations.
On that bombshell of huge, broad generalizations, it is kind of, I think it's just really encouraging, first of all, to see London Book Fair appoint a literary translator of the fair. I'm delighted that you were that first person to take the role, Jeremy. I think that we're very excited to see what happens in the future with the role, and that we hope that next year we're able to welcome the second literary translator of the fair back as well, and also you. Perhaps we can host a ceremony where you hand a burning dictionary over to the next recipient of the award. Or
what if I just refuse to go? Just back
it's
next
all
year.
going to be done by holograms and at that point anyway. But Jeremy will be here for a short period of time, and I'm sure I'm happy to take questions on a personal level. But first of all, I'd like to thank him for being that first translator of the fair and helping increase the visibility of literary translation within the wider publishing ecology, and to thank you also for coming to hear him talk this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you all.